Hello and welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel, whichever one applies to you. My name is Kai, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some weird shit that humans do and why I'm pretty sure that we do these things. I've seen a few different neurologists and psychologists talk about this. I looked into the literature on it a little bit, not a whole lot. Definitely not enough to be able to quote anything directly. And um, this is the topic that I was going to talk about in the last video, but I ended up deciding to make it its own video because that one was already like 45 minutes long. And this topic, if I'm able to articulate it properly, um, is probably going to be close to that. And the two topics are not as connected as I initially thought they were when I started talking about the first one. So, um, let me get a drink. No Monster right now. I already had my Monster today. I might have one later, I'm not sure. But we got the Arizona green tea with ginseng and honey. It's like one of my favorite like pre-made teas to get. Um so every few years or every few months, this sort of topic of, at least in like what I see, I don't really have like social media or anything, so I don't see it as often, only when it like makes the rounds on YouTube. But this subject comes up and is talked about, like how fucking weird human beings are, like in terms of survivability and the things that we do, the things that we put into our body. um so like I'm sure most of you have like seen some sort of video talking about how like humans can survive falling like 3 stories and being impaled by a piece of rebar, and sometimes even take themselves to the hospital with the rebar in them. But if we step a certain way, we can break our ankles. Like it's super super fucking weird. The same thing with like um intoxicants, stuff that um plants evolved to be deterrents to certain types of animals. The example I'm going to be using a lot in this video is capsaicin in peppers, because capsaicin it evolved as a direct like result of, or like see, I'm already starting to lose articulation on this. I don't know why, but this topic specifically, um I always have a really hard time articulating. Maybe it's because I'm not as well learned on this topic as a lot of people. Or maybe I'm just really fucking stupid. I'm not too sure. But capsaicin, it affects mammals really only. Like, we're really the only types of animals that capsaicin has that spicy effect on, because it was meant to be a deterrent to mammals, so that birds who are better at spreading seeds further would be the ones to eat the peppers, eat the seeds, and then spread them. And like people seem to take joy in eating spicy food. I love eating spicy food, like not anything super super spicy. So like I usually don't eat anything that's like hotter than one or two average jalapenos in terms of spiciness. Um, Although I have been building up my spice tolerance over the last few years. And people are always, these things get memed a lot because it's like at some point some human found a pepper and ate it and was like, oh my God, that's hot. But it's kind of good. Like I want to keep eating it. But everyone's like, why did we do this? Like, what was the point of doing this? Why do people like intentionally um like crossbreed peppers to be really hot? Like why do they genetically modify or create new peppers that are insanely hot like the Carolina Reaper or the ghost pepper? And I want to say that it's a simple answer, but it's kind of not. So like, and I'm going to make a whole video about what I'm about to say. There's like a whole timeline thing like I've looked into in terms of like human evolution and the evolution of the tools that we have used throughout the millennia. And once you get to a certain point, like right around the Industrial Revolution, give or take a couple hundred years, um, the tools that we were using, the technology that we were using was about equal to where our brains were in terms of evolutionary development. Um, and like in those times as well, the main priority for the vast majority of human beings was just survival. Like there was not much room to think to even think about like being comfortable because it just wasn't a necessity. Survival was the first thing, and if you were able to like secure your survival and mainly in like the winter time, you would be able to get some level of comfort going just because like the winter was when it became really hard to actually go out and do any of the work that you needed to do. And so like the most work that most people would have to do when we started getting like permanent buildings and stuff was getting the firewood, starting a fire, and keeping the fire going. But for most of the year, up until that point, most people were like working their asses off, sun up to sundown, farming, taking care of their animals, making sure that they were stockpiling and properly like uh, storing their food so that they would have food for the winter. uh Getting firewood stocked up, setting up their firewood to cure so that it would burn properly and not like explode in the fire or release a whole bunch of like really awful chemicals. And really a lot of that curing process is just leaving it out in the sun and then like turning it every now and then so that and like rotating it so that it dries out properly. um so comfort for the general populace of the human species was not commonplace until around the Industrial Revolution era. Um, and then when that came about, we started being able to have like pretty solid permanent structures. We had a pretty decent infrastructure system going on. Um, like we had set people who did all the farming for our area. We, traded goods with them or paid them uh excess food so that we would have some. We started getting ice boxes and figuring out how to do all that. And so being able to afford to inject comfort into your life became a lot easier, and it has, ever since the Industrial Revolution, it has become easier and easier and easier. um you know Most people didn't have to worry about water scarcity. We figured out how to really filter and purify our water really well. So um and if you know anything about um Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think it's called, um a person cannot of like a person's brain cannot afford to allocate energy to anything besides survival needs until their base survival needs have been met. That's just how the brain works. And we've more or less proven this with the modern technology that we have now in the last 10, 20 years with neuroimaging and stuff. And the brain literally restricts and directs the energy that it is provided by being fed, water, stuff like that. And it will completely or almost completely shut down like unnecessary to survival parts of the brain. So like the parts of the brain that allow someone to be creative, to um creativity, to think bigger than just like their work and whatever they're doing to survive. And so when the only way that you can get to a place where you can really get into your creativity and creation and stuff like that is generally when you have your base needs met. Even if it's just barely being met, it will still allow your brain to send some of its energy to other parts of the brain because it doesn't have to think as much about surviving. If you know where your next meal is going to come from, and you don't have to worry about that. If you have a roof over your head, four walls, if you have access to clean water, um, it can afford to allocate some of the energy that it's being given to other things that aren't technically necessary for survival. Um, but because we had so many technological advances, like massive technological advances from the Industrial Revolution period onwards, um, our technology, our society, our infrastructures, they all became more intricate than our brains were ready to deal with, really. So, our brains evolved a certain way because of certain things. And it really wasn't until around the Industrial Revolution that we started seeing these massive technology jumps, or development, in shorter and shorter amount of times. Like, when you look at all this shit, it's crazy. The video I want to make about this specifically, like the technology jumps and the human brain evolution, I'm going to make a full video for it, and that video is actually going to be probably one of the only videos I edit for this channel, because I want to include like actual like um visual representations. Like, I want to create an actual timeline for it and everything, because it's super super interesting. Like, our brains were not developed from an evolutionary standpoint to function properly with this kind of technology, like cell phones and laptops and computers, and being super interconnected with the rest of the world, which is why we have so many issues around mental health and radicalization and like interpersonal interpersonal issues with people online. Um, so basically, our brains didn't really evolve to the point that they are at right now, which the way our brains are structured is very, very similar to how they were structured in like the hunters and gatherers, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, like maybe thousands of years ago. Um, so our brains are wired for survival first and foremost. Like, that is our pattern recognition, fear response, and the neurochemicals that come along with that response. Like all sorts of stuff like this has like, it's all revolving around surviving and just living. Just keep alive for as long as you can, no matter what you have to do. So like, uh I can't think of a really good example, but basically, our brains didn't like, there wasn't a whole lot of like true comfort when our brains were evolving to the point that they are now. So, like, if you think about the nomadic indigenous people before, like, the first signs of modern civilization were coming up, which I consider stuff like uh, the Roman Empire, or like the first like dynasty in China and stuff, is like the first signs of human civilization. So our brains had not developed to a point where they could properly interpret consistent comfort. So when you look at these nomadic groups of indigenous folks that like, one of the main ways that they knew how to survive was to just keep moving. Uh they would set up a camp in one place for a while, um if it was pretty resource dense, and then after a while, when they started seeing the resources depleted, they would pack up and move to another place and just keep going. And yes, they did dance, they sang, they told stories, like, they had their comfort moments around campfires and stuff, but it was never 100% consistent. It was never constant, like a lot of people get to experience nowadays. Sometimes they would have to be like on guard still while they were doing these things, just in case a pack of wolves happened to show up. um or and like even when they were asleep, they had to be ready to fight at any moment, um like fight for their lives at any moment. So they did not, most of them were likely not very heavy sleepers because they couldn't afford to be. um and if you know anything about psychology in particular, you know that anxiety as we know it today is simply the fear response being triggered, but no clear, like, external, like, existential threat available. So the people who are really prone to anxiety with like anxiety disorders, which I have, which has gotten a lot better, it may not even be considered a disorder anymore. Um, so people with anxiety disorders are very sensitive to the fear response being triggered by like any sort of stimulus that like something in the brain got crossed at some point, and a specific stimuli will trigger the fear response. But because there's nothing that screams imminent danger that you can see in your vicinity when that fear response triggers, the brain doesn't know what to do. Like, because the brain knows that when this fear response triggers, it is because there is an imminent threat to your life and you need to do something about it, depending on what it is. So you have fight, flight, freeze, or freak out, which I don't know if freak out is um, a relatively new addition to one of these fear response actions or if it has always been there. Um, but since the brain doesn't see anything that is a clear indicator of imminent, like, existential danger, it kind of enters this cycle of like feeding into the fear response and looking for things that like triggered it that are an immediate danger to you, and like it will just force itself into this cycle until like something snaps you out of it. Like it, if there's no immediate danger that you can see, but it keeps getting this like feedback of you're in danger, you're in danger, you're in danger, it doesn't ever have a way to resolve. If it doesn't have a way to resolve, it just keeps going until you make it resolve. So, um, when you look at like these genetically engineered peppers, like the or modified or crossbred peppers, like the Carolina Reaper or the Ghost Pepper, the most likely reason that we did these things, and it's also the most likely reason that people go skydiving or get into BMX or ride motorcycles or like go skiing, bungee jumping, all this like really dangerous stuff that people don't, like, the average person is like, oh my god, I can't believe like you fucking went skydiving, like that's so dangerous. Like that's always the first thought in our head when we think about stuff like that, is it's so dangerous, you could have died. But that's the whole point. Like, our bodies and our brains don't know what to do with constant comfort. They just don't. Like, we just never had in all of recorded human history up until around the Industrial Revolution, we didn't have constant, consistent comfort environments. Like, we just didn't have the ability to have these. And the only people who did were like royalty or like rulers, emperors, kings, like, and when you look at them, they were even pretty antsy and they had stuff going around them like that that would also kind of instill a kind of sense of danger or fear in them. Like, it would get their blood pumping really, like really get their blood pumping and boiling. Like the Colosseum fights in ancient Rome. The Egyptians had their own things, like all it's just, you see this, like the people who didn't have to worry about survival have consistently been finding ways to initiate some form of like adrenaline and like sense of danger and fear. Like, we have people who go and sit down and watch really scary movies and they enjoy it. Like, and around Halloween time, we have haunted houses. Like, we don't know what to do with constant comfort. Like, our brains just cannot comprehend that that's what's happening. And so when you see people who like consistently go and do these dangerous things like skiing and skydiving and stuff, and you ask them, why are you doing this? One of the first answers that you're going to get from most people is that they were bored in their life. Like, they have a regular job, like a boring office job or something. They like it, besides going and doing these things, like, they never leave their city or their town. And they felt like they needed to do something that was more intense than just regular everyday stuff. And I say a lot of them and most of them and stuff because there's also people who go and do these things to get over a specific fear. So like, some people who are afraid of heights will go and like do bungee jumping or skydiving, or like, what's it called, the when you get pulled by a boat and you have the parachute and you're up in the air, like stuff like that. They'll do these things to get over the fear, but generally it's because they were too comfortable in their life and they felt like they need, like, something was missing. They needed something to give them that adrenaline. Like roller coaster fanatics, same thing. We're just, our brains were not designed in a way that can really deal with and make sense of constant comfort. So when like uh, what I think happened when we first discovered like spicy food, like spicy peppers and stuff, I don't think those peppers would have been anywhere near as spicy as any pepper that you can get today. I think the capsaicin content of them would have been significantly less because the plant wouldn't have needed very much to deter a mammal from eating it. Um, so like if you were a cow or a horse or a goat or some other like primarily herbivorous animal, most of what you ate would have been either sweet or fibrous with next to no, like, with like a kind of bitter-ish taste, so like grass and stuff. It has a weird flavor. And since peppers were generally quite vibrant colors, like bright and vibrant colors to appeal to birds, um, like something like a cow would probably see it and be like, "Oh, there's a berry. I'm gonna go eat that berry." And then it would take a bite of the berry, and that spicy sensation is something that it would not have likely tasted before, and it would probably make it freak the fuck out. Like, it wouldn't need much to do that either. It just needs to be different enough, and like from any other flavor that that animal would have eaten naturally, to make the animal go away. And so what I think happened when humans found these were they tried them and they're like, "Oh, that's like a weird, unpleasant experience in my mouth, but the this fruit itself tastes really good." So they likely did one of two things depending on where they were at, because they were trying to just get whatever they could that had any nutritional value, um, so that they could survive. So I think one of two things would have likely happened, depending on where in the world they were and the culture around different foods. They would have either worked it into an existing cooked meal that would balance out the spice, or they would eat it by itself and just deal with the spice. Just deal with it because hey, it's not making me super sick. It's not killing me. So it must have some nutritional value. So I'm going to force myself to eat this so I can survive. And then over time, as we got more, like bigger and bigger pockets of constant comfort, we started seeking more stimuli that like was uncomfortable. And you can you can like you can build a tolerance to discomfort. It's not very easy, but if you do something enough times that makes you uncomfortable, you will become comfortable doing it eventually. Most people who are sales salespeople nowadays, most of these salespeople, when they first start out, and I know this because I was a salesperson for like 3 months one time, and it didn't take me long to get comfortable doing it. But you start out and you're really uncomfortable selling to people because you have to deal with being told no or rejected or just straight up ignored, like over like hundreds of times a day or a week or whatever. And you have to learn different ways of doing it, but it's super uncomfortable. But if you stick with it long enough, you become comfortable in doing it, and then you get really good at it. So over time, as we started getting more and more comfort in our daily lives, we started seeking these uncomfortable stimuli to like placate and satiate our brain's desire and search for discomfort, because if you can get through discomfort, that means you're surviving. And if you're sitting comfortable, something's wrong. They started getting used to the spice of these peppers, and as they got used to it, it wasn't causing as much discomfort. And so the brain was like, hey, I need more, I need more, I need more. And at some point when we realized that we could crossbreed them to make them spicier. There were certain ways that we could grow them to make them spicier, and then we got into like genetic modifications and genetic engineering. We were able to make them really spicy because we needed that discomfort. We needed it. You always need discomfort in your life. Otherwise, you're not going to grow. And so like also like humans have, sorry, I got to keep this lit. So like humans, as far as we know from recorded history and like anecdotal history that's passed down through the generations by word of mouth, humans have constantly, like almost always, enjoyed some form of altering their baseline state of consciousness through some sort of intoxicant like alcohol or marijuana or like coca leaves, like stuff like that. And I think part of that is also just like it, I don't know, it just does something that the brain likes in some way. I don't think it's really 100 like completely related to making yourself uncomfortable. I mean, it could be, but also it could just be like a novelty experience. Like, oh, if you eat this one rotten fruit or you drink the juice from this rotten fruit, it makes the world dizzy and it makes everything funny, you know? Like, um, so, so yeah, I think, I think that's it for now on this video. I can't really think of anything else that I need or want to say on this topic. Um, but yeah, if you have any thoughts or ideas or theories on this subject, or you have another topic that you want to see me talk about and get my opinion and theories on, let me know. As long as I am able to, like if this channel ever takes off, I'm going to read every comment I can and attempt to reply to every comment. So yeah, I'll see you next time.